Today's Total Soccer Show is sponsored by Enclosed. Enclosed is a luxury gift service that delivers designer lingerie to your lady.
That's right, and I like Enclosed because, not going to lie, I'm a 33-year-old child. Buying lingerie kind of makes me like a little bit uncomfortable. But I was talking to my wife about it, and her point was that, no, buying lingerie shows your partner that you love them, you love their body, and so you should do it.
It's a way of saying, I think you're beautiful.
Exactly.
And you can say, I think you're beautiful every month. If you go to theenclosed.com, you can use the discount code SOCCER for $20 off your first designer lingerie purchase. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show on the road edition number 3. My name is Daryl Grove, and joining me in our little fort that we've still made is Taylor Rockwell, my housemate of the last 3 or 4 days.
Indeed. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I know we spend a lot of time together,
we do.
People know, but we've spent more time than ever before together over the last few days.
That is true. I think this is the most time we spent together. Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't trade a minute of it.
I mean, I would if I could get more minutes for maybe a little bit more sleep. But other than that, yes, I agree. Other than that, I agree.
I'd trade it for sleep.
Yeah. So I'm also going to go ahead and do this. And now we're good.
Yay.
Because we still have one more day left together.
We sure do.
That was me knocking on wood.
I saw
not punching Daryl.
So if you don't know, we're in Philadelphia for the United Soccer Coaches Convention and the MLS Super Draft and the NWSL College Draft. We've got an interview with Herculez Gomez on today's show. Taylor interviewed Herc. I did. Haven't heard it. I'm excited to hear it.
We talked trash about you the entire time.
I mean, that's the obvious topic, right? That's the obvious topic. But I thought we'd maybe update people on what we've been doing over the last few days, because it's genuinely been a very exciting time for us, right? I would say not just spending time with you, but all the other people we've met. Here's how I would describe the convention from our perspective. It's as if all the people we know on Twitter and people we've spoken to over the phone, like that was a virtual world. And someone has made that virtual world real and placed it all inside the Pennsylvania Convention Center.
I almost did, and I'm still going to do for the purposes of the joke, a very like roundabout way of saying, it's like almost like all of these people who get together to like dress up and go to like Comic-Con, and then I was like, all right, we're at a convention. It's exactly literally the same thing.
Comic-Con has gone through my head, quite a few times, except all the cosplayers like kind of like a button-down shirt.
Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, we did. Anybody? I haven't seen anybody dressed up yet. No, but we've seen Jason Davis.
Yes.
You've met Jason Davis before. I have not.
So first time meeting him for a lot of time. So first night, we went out to see the Cooligans.
My new best friends.
Alexis and Christian do some stand-up, and we're mighty relieved that they were very, very funny.
Yes.
Right? They're funny on their show, but, stand-up is a whole other thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Turns out they're very good at that.
They're very good at
Thoroughly recommend them. Thumbs up to those guys.
Indeed. Yeah. Jason Davis, we did the live show with George Qureshi.
George Qureshi. First time for you to meet George from Howdy Magazine.
First time for me basically meeting everybody, because it was George Qureshi. Brooks joined us to do a little bit of trivia. I've never met Brooks in the flesh.
Brooks was a weird one to me. I felt like I'd met him before, and yet I hadn't.
I mean, we've been on about 40 conference calls with him,
that's
so
true.
I think there is that. Anytime you've been on multiple conference calls, that's when you know you're truly bonded. But no, I mean, Alexi Lawless, we've talked to him many times, never met him face-to-face before. We did this time. Tab Ramos, we've never spoken to before, but we did meet, so that was cool.
We did the live show this past Thursday at Jose Pistola's bar. I'm not promoting it now. I'm just saying they were very, very good to us.
Yes,
there.
they were.
I want to say a thank you to anyone at Jose Pistola's. If you live around here and you go in there, please let them know that the guys who did the live show, on the soccer show on the Thursday, say thank you for being so welcoming for us.
I believe I saw them serve a pitcher of margaritas with one straw. So if you need that in Philly, that's the place to go.
Apparently so. Is that even legal?
I hope so. Otherwise, I got them in trouble. But I mean, and I apologize because I know we're leaving out lots of other folks who we met, because it's been a very good whirlwind couple of days.
Yeah.
But it's been really, really good.
So live show, there was audio recorded. We're going to be sort of publishing that, I think, Sunday evening. We're going to try and coordinate it with George, right? So that we don't want to like steal each other's downloads. We'll try and put it out at exactly the same time. George did a great job hosting. Alexi and Tab Ramos, great answers.
Yep.
We got some I thought of it as being like a everybody laughing, knocking about kind of show, but Tab got into some stuff.
He did.
And I noticed we had the whole room of people got kind of hushed and listened, because he was like describing the US soccer style and all that kind of stuff that people genuinely wanted to hear.
Yes.
I also want to say
Rapt, R-A-P-T, not the Tab Ramos is suddenly a hip-hop artist.
There was not a Tab Ramos hip-hop performance. Although maybe we should do that for the next live show.
Pass.
I wanted to say a special thank you to Julie. Julie, who we saw just before the show. Because you and I were nervous, right? Always nervous before a live show in an adrenaline-y kind of way, right? And it's just very nice to have someone say, hey, I'm really looking forward to it. And it just makes you feel welcome and that, you're going to go out there to a good reception.
Yes.
Thank you, Julie. Much appreciated.
Yes, and to everyone else who came out and to everybody who was very wonderful in the crowd. It is always weird because I don't consciously know I'm nervous, but suddenly I'm like, everything is like hot and sweating and cold at the same time, and my stomach hurts and I have a headache. And then as soon as the performance was over, all that went away. It was weird.
Amazing, right?
Actually, as soon as the performance started, I should say.
And we had a good time meeting
we did.
all kinds of people afterwards.
We did, and yet I have to say, one of my favorite things with all of that said has been the important lesson that Americans don't hold hands enough.
So the other thing that's going on at this convention, it's not just, there were the one-on-one interviews with Sunil Gulati, Bruce Arena, Eric Ronaldo. We'll maybe touch on those later in today's show, just a little bit. But there's also all kinds of coaching clinics going on a big demo field because for all the coaches that have come to the convention.
And also just like sessions, like PowerPoint presentations about how to utilize a diamond or how to incorporate a goalkeeper into possession.
But we kind of rolled the dice on this one session that looked kind of interesting. Do you have the details in front of you of what it was?
I can tell you that it was Gary Fuyando, I think is how I'm going to go ahead and pronounce that. But hopefully we'll get to speak to him sometime in the future because he was genuinely fascinating. He was from,
I believe, Athletic Club de Bilbao.
That sounds familiar.
And he's worked for La Liga in a sort of advisory methodology capacity. These were all words that are coming to my head from the session.
Well, I have the flyer in front of me. I think now he's running a company called Kimmit Sport, but it's all about kind of like teaching like Spanish La Liga technical training to American teams, American coaches, American players.
And it was a lot about sort of how to make space, how to break the lines. And it was fascinating to watch, I'm going to call him Gary, Gari, run these, I think they were like U19 Development Academy kids through the sessions to try and teach them more about finding space and breaking the lines. And some stuff I could spot, because it's easy to spot stuff from the sidelines. Some stuff I hadn't spotted, and I was kind of blew my mind a little bit when he pointed it out. I'm like, oh, this guy's good.
He's very good. And one of the things to go back to like how we got here is that he was talking about how American coaches, I think he was implying American coaches, are a little bit afraid to like be physical.
Yes.
That like you could see him like not shoving, but it was like, no, you need to go here. And he would like move the player. But he would do so in a very like
in an Ikapara Latif Blessing kind of way.
Yeah. But even then that was like that was being like both shoulders being moved. This was just sort of like a push to the chest, like back up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't this like, let me take a time and slow it down and back you up gently. It was just like, go there, do this. And it was very quick, very demanding. And part of it was also that he was saying that like he would hold hands with players to make them go a different way or to show them how to defend in a group.
What he did is there were two defenders and he had them trying to close down three attackers and how to block off space. And they'd done some drills to try and work on that.
Right.
And in the end, he held their hands to his left and his right and kind of dragged them with him to the correct position. And they kind of shut down the other team with him doing that.
Yeah.
And you could see those kids really learned it because then they the next drill they really the next phase of that they really contained them and the attacking team couldn't get anywhere. So really fascinating to watch a top level coach in action because normally you don't get access to that, right, unless you're on that team, because if like media days they may not let you see some of the more intricate stuff.
And it was just also
we wrote down some drills maybe we could use with that team.
This is definitely true, but it was really interesting to see. Like I think it was because he had the shaved head and was Spanish. He did have that sort of Pep Guardiola vibe, and we've seen those videos of him like pushing players around and being really demanding, and you get why players are really in rapt attention and very second rapt of the episode and very focused, because if you're not, he catches it. And there were moments when a player 40 yards away over in the corner would drift a little bit. He'd be like, no, go to that cone. Like he was on it and he was all over the place. And it just, you see why there is a little bit more accountability in those high level programs.
I also learned a new phrase. We won't spend too much longer on Gary because maybe if you haven't seen it, this isn't coming across. I'm hoping it is. But he kept describing taking the correct defensive position and closing down the angle, the most dangerous angle towards goal. He would say, close the door of your house.
Yep.
Do not leave the door of your house open. Close the door of your house.
And then I think it got expanded too, because if you do, then your whole neighborhood is vulnerable.
Yes, close your neighborhood.
Close
your neighborhood,
But away from the coaching training sessions, there were also very interesting talks. We've attended a couple different ones now. The two that have stood out most for me would be the one with Sunil Gulati and the one with Eric Ronaldo.
Ooh, okay, so we got audio from both of those. We can't post the whole thing. I thought that'd be kind of bad form to reveal the whole interview, but we will take some really good snippets from it. Maybe next week we'll post them. Are there any sort of bits of news that came out of that interested you at all?
Does it have to be news, or can it be my favorite part?
It can be your favorite
part.
Can
it be when Sunil Gulati shut down George Qureshi?
Oh, yes.
Because I don't think that will play so well over the audio. But George What was the question? It was like, can you tell us your favorite story that involves all of or one of
Chuck Blazer,
Jack Warner, and Sepp Blatter?
Yeah.
But there was no microphone for the audience to ask questions. So what was happening is the audience member would ask a question, Sunil Gulati would repeat the question and then answer it. When George asked that, he said,
George asked me, will the US women's national team win the She Believes Cup? And I believe they will.
Yes, and then that was it. I was like, next question. Yeah. He did not want to go into that one.
I will say this. Well, maybe we'll talk more about Sunil when we post some of the audio. He was very defensive, right? About some of the things he'd done, and it came off kind of dismissive in some ways. There's lots to criticise him for, but that man's funny. He's kind of deadpan funny.
No, I mean, he's got his moments. I mean, we talked about it afterwards. He had his line of, he was told, you're a lousy politician. Mm-hmm. And I think my thing I wrote down was like, for a lousy politician, he's very good at being a politician.
I would say it's a very smart political thing to say
Indeed.
I'm a lousy politician.
Indeed.
Because then you're just saying this is all natural, right? Yeah.
And it is.
We know, we're too smart for that. We can see it.
We can. I would say it was interesting. It was in the same room, the Gulati interview, and then the next day, today, was Winalda's. Mm-hmm. And obviously two very different viewpoints on U.S. soccer. But it sort of has been a little bit frustrating in that regard because it seems like everything is a problem and nothing is a problem, but everything needs to be fixed, but nothing needs to be fixed, and there's no real way to do it. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like, and I don't mean to bum people out with that, but it does feel like as though no one is even on a consensus page about this needs to be dealt with. Like, because we hear from Sunil Gulati, the outgoing president, and I'm assuming there are reasons to not go into these details for him, but it did feel like he was just sort of like, no, that's fine. No, that can't be changed. No, it's going to be like this, which maybe is what we should have expected, but I still think it would have been nice to hear, no, like, we do need to change this. This really isn't working.
Yeah, there's quite a few sort of straw man things, right? Like, I remember someone asked him about pro-rel, right? Yeah. And he says, like, we can't just tomorrow say we're going to do pro-rel. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like setting up a straw man to knock it down, to not have the conversation about pro-rel.
Yes.
Right? But what if you said, let's do it in 20 years, right? You could at least open it to that. But he made it tomorrow so that he could easily dismiss it.
Yes. And he worked very hard.
He being Sunil.
Yes,
for those
to
who are
not mention a single candidate's name. I think the only time he did was when he was expressly asked about... was it Eric Winalda?
Yes,
or was it
was very much Eric Winalda.
I think that was the only time that he actually mentioned a candidate's name. But I still think a lot of his responses hinted at frustration he has towards Eric Winalda.
Yeah.
And so I do think that colored some of the answers. This is complete speculation on my part, but it felt like the pro-rel question, he was asked about that, or I think it was just sort of like these, he referred to them as nonsensical solutions. This wasn't a question, this was just him
you
talking.
followed him up on that, right?
I did.
Yeah.
But he talked about pro-rel, and he said, we can't do pro-rel the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
But no one is suggesting we can.
You pushed it a day further out than I did.
But I think the candidate who has been most public in saying we need to change things, pro-rel needs to be a thing, is Eric Winalda. And so it felt like when you sort of take a person's comments and make them slightly absurd, you're making their campaign, you're attempting to at least to make it slightly absurd.
It's very political.
Yeah. It's almost like he's a good politician.
A session we didn't go to was the Bruce Arena session. Oh, we were at the La Liga coaching session. That's why we didn't go to the Bruce Arena session, kind of because we didn't want to hear more excuses about why we didn't qualify for the World Cup. And it turns out that pretty much is what we would have heard, right? Because the quotes have been posted now. Is it a Brian Strauss article?
Yes.
For Sports Illustrated. So you can definitely go find that, go read that. We read through before. I think one of the things that I believe a quote from this is Bruce Arena said, I would have made 7 changes between 2017 and the World Cup.
Yes.
Is that the actual number?
It was. The team we had not the field against Trinidad at the end. Okay. Compared to a team that would have been on the field at the opening game of the 2018 World Cup, there'd be as many as 7 changes. We knew we had to get better, but we had to somehow manage to get through 2017 and qualify and try to make our team better for a World Cup.
Okay, so some of those changes could be like John Brooks, if he's healthy, but that's one change.
Yeah.
But that definitely means that there are guys that he maybe planned to bring into the team ready for 2018 World Cup, right? And it could be Weston McKennie, could be Tyler Adams, for example, could be guys like that who are on the cusp. I think someone really needs to ask him is, why didn't you make those changes sooner?
I mean, they can, but I want to go back to like when I looked at the schedule and I said, "Ooh, I really want to go to that one." And to your credit, you said, why? And then I thought about it for a half second. I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea why I want to do that. It's just going to be frustrating. And I think these sort of answers confirm that like he's not going to answer that. He's not going to say, well, we could do this or we should have done that, or he's not even going to be specific. He's just going to be kind of vague and dance around it and probably be a little bit sarcastic and say like, oh, would you have done that? Who would you have called in? Did you know him before he got his first cap for a club team? Like, so you're not going to get that sort of answer. And I think it speaks to the fact that I'd have
happily gone head to head with him with how many times we've watched Jonathan Gonzalez on Univision this year, and I think I would have won that Univision off.
But I still think it sort of is like it's a little bit underpants numbers for me. It's like phase 1 steal underpants, phase 2 phase 3 profit, and he's not really looking at phase 2 that's missing there. And it is sort of like, well, we knew they weren't good enough, and we knew this wasn't going to work, but we played them anyway.
Yep.
And then eventually we were going to figure it out.
And spoiler alert, the underpants gnomes do not get rich.
They don't.
Yeah, right?
And they don't go to the World Cup either.
They actually only get phase 1 steal underpants, and that's kind of it. They just have a big pile of stinky underpants.
For now. I think the other pull quote from this one, I'm assuming this was a question regarding the locker room or what else went wrong. He said, regarding the locker room, there were a couple of bad eggs like you have on every team. We were well aware of it. He also went on to say that I just think a lot of pressure built up on some players, especially when we conceded the first goal. Some people cracked.
I mean, credit for sticking with the egg imagery.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, I guess this is why I'm really happy in the end we didn't go.
Okay.
And I understand why he can't do this from a professional standpoint, but the reason you would accept this engagement, and I'm assuming he said the same thing Sunil Gulati did, which is I accepted it before we failed to qualify.
The engagement being the one-on-one, yeah.
But it sort of is like, if you're going to come out here and try to kind of defend yourself and a little bit do damage control, like reputation damage control, which I think he was doing, you got to name names, man. You can't sidestep stuff. And like,
and you've got to explain why, if we're aware of 2 bad eggs, maybe toss those eggs out.
Well, yeah, but I just
get some fresh ones.
Well, true, but I'm also saying that like if you want to try to like be a little bit cute and say there were some bad eggs in there, like that's where it needs to be. Like no, like we had a problem with blank. He did not. It didn't seem like he wanted to be there because obviously they've had that conversation. Obviously, if that's the case, they're not getting along. So it's not like he's protecting that player from himself. I don't know. So it just felt like there were opportunities to get more specific, real answers about what went wrong rather than a list of things that felt like Dwight in The Office trying to explain away accidentally shooting a gun. I mean, like, am I sorry that I did it? Yes. Should we have done more? Yes. At the end of the day, is it my responsibility? Yes. And then Kathy Bates' character interrupts and says, oh, you're just asking yourself questions so you sound like a genius. And that's really what it felt like. It's just sort of like taking responsibility in the like most roundabout possible way.
All right. I think you've made your feelings very clear there.
Have I?
The other thing that we attended today was the MLS Super Draft and all the very loud music that goes with it. We sure did. If you want to hear some detail about the draft, John Martino, number 1 pick for LAFC. You can find the Top Draw Soccer Show. Travis Clark, who really is the college soccer expert, he really knew in detail about every player that was drafted in the NWSL draft and the MLS draft. We recorded an episode kind of in a corner of the outside of the room, the quietest place we could find, and we still had our table stolen by the staff halfway through, but we did get an episode together, got some good detail about the draft there. So go find the Top Draw Soccer Show for all your Super Draft and NWSL college draft coverage.
So you should definitely listen to that, but since I am not on it, I will tell you one of my favorite moments. I don't want to say my favorite moment because here are all of these kids like fulfilling their dreams of getting drafted and being very excited, but I did love hearing Don Garber attempt to speak and get drowned out by a Save the Crew chant.
Yep. So there were MLS fans in the room. Don Garber attempted to speak. They started chanting, Save the Crew, Save the Crew. It was the loudest chant of the whole day because it was more than one set of supporters.
Yeah.
Right? It was kind of a room full.
I think we had, by the initial announcements, what we had Philly fans, obviously. I think we had NYCFC. I think we had some Red Bulls fans. And I think we had some Galaxy, and we definitely had some LAFC fans in the house.
Maybe some DC fans? Who
I hope not for their sake.
Arrived to cheer their allocation money?
Yeah, basically. The DC Twitter account did tweet a photo of a bag of money in a DC United jersey. So that's great.
Perfect.
But I think all of those supporters groups, I'm guessing, were chanting Save the Crew.
Yeah. So, and the reason I think this is important is it's MLS fans at the MLS Super Draft protesting a thing that MLS is doing. I don't know if this has happened in the past, and I think it's kind of important that, you know, there's all the executives are there, all the GMs and everything are milling around. Like all of MLS is there, right? And there's the fans, they're sort of customers and the people they get money from. literally telling them, save the crew. Right? Save the crew is becoming one of those things. You know, when you say a word too many times, and it kind of loses meaning. But if you actually think what they're saying, they are saying to the people, save the crew.
And
right?
the organizers really listened.
They asked them to be quiet
by sending security over.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That says a lot to me about the whole setup. Whole setup.
It does indeed. It does indeed. Speaking of Save the Crew, thank you to
Renee,
who came to the live show. He and I had a conversation about living in Kurdistan. Like 3 different people I met last night had some connection to either living in Kurdistan or having had friends who live there. So that was cool.
I also had connections with people. Everyone I met was into soccer.
Yeah. It was weird, right? Yeah. It was weird. And seemed to know things about you and about us. I did enjoy, somebody took a photo, when we took a photo together as a couple, everybody already knew the joke about Common Law Podcast Married. So there's that. But I very much enjoy that I now have a hashtag Save the Crew sticker on my phone.
I have a hashtag Save the Crew sticker. I haven't put it on my phone yet. I think I'm going to.
Copycat.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like that.
But thank you, Renee, for the stickers.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we get to the interview with Herc, Taylor, I got a quiz for you.
What you got?
What am I wearing?
You are wearing a woven shirt.
A woven? Is that how you pronounce it?
No, because actually that is incorrect. It's woven.
Yes, it is. It is spelled WOHVEN. If you go to woven.com, today's sponsor. Woven. Yeah. So Woven is a T-shirt company, a T-shirt subscription company, $15 a month for a graphic tee every month, designed by a different graphic designer. They have a new redesigned website. Their new slogan, I guess. Simple looks good.
Ooh, I like that one.
I am here to, as proof, I believe.
I know.
Because this is one of my favourite woven t-shirts. I'm very aware this is not a video podcast, but this one came in the fall. It's brown, and it's got like a orange and yellow kind of like mountain type design on it. I think it's a really good example of what Woven do, which is simple, elegant, beautiful designs.
Do you know why I'm not wearing my Woven shirt?
No,
because my wife always says I have too many T-shirts, and so somehow it slipped my mind to pack any T-shirts. So I didn't bring a single T-shirt.
You didn't bring any T-shirts? What? I
have 3 long sleeve T-shirts.
Yeah?
That's what I've been rocking.
Oh wow! Yeah. All right. Well, it's been pretty cold here in Philly, so that's fine.
But I was sad because my Woven shirts were on top of the pile.
So if Taylor had remembered, he would have brought one of our sponsors' T-shirts with him.
I absolutely would have.
So if you would like to get yourself a Woven T-shirt, you go to woven.com, you go to checkout, and you use the discount code TSS2018, TSS2018. You get 25% off your first month, your first T-shirt at woven.com. I really, really recommend this company, woven.com. The link will be in the show notes.
So thank you to Woven for sponsoring today's program. Daryl Grove, thank you for talking to me up to this point. But now you're going to, I guess, leave the room? Is that how this works? I mean, since you're leaving the podcast, you have to get out of the apartment.
That's what I did when you interviewed Herculez Gomez. So do I have to do the same now on the show?
You do. You do. All right, so you leaving the room then?
I guess so. I'll leave the fort.
Okay. Joining me on the line, I've got Herculez Gomez. You know him and love him, as do I. Herc, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I really wanted to talk to you a lot about the involvement of the Latino community, about kind of what's been going on with U.S. soccer recruitment. But first, today I noticed that you announced your retirement a year and 2 days ago. So it seemed fitting to bring that up. Have you enjoyed retirement, or has it been a strange transition?
It hasn't really felt like retirement. I've been on the go.
Yeah.
But it does feel good not to be using my body as much. The body takes a break and the mind keeps going faster. So it's been a pretty interesting transition. Get to see the other side of the sport now. One of the many sides, let's just say, of the sport. It's been a lot of fun, some highs, some lows, great learning experiences. And then, it's crazy to think it's already been a year. It's gone by so fast.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot to cover. It's been sort of rough here. Maybe that's the problem, is that you retired and it seems like the wheels came off the U.S. soccer train. No, I guess not train. Trains don't have wheels.
Yeah, who would have thought, right? Now, these things happen. These things happen in any sport. But it has been a kind of an anomaly, the way everything has kind of snowballed. And maybe it was there all along, and it just took something like this to uncover it.
Yeah. Well, so I read a Sports Illustrated profile of you, and you mentioned the term colmillo, which I thought was pretty interesting. Can you explain to our listeners what that means and kind of how it related to your development, and if you think it applies the potential development of other dual nationals?
Well, I don't think you need to be a dual national. Colmillo is a Spanish term for, for having that experience, or that I don't want to say with malice, but that savviness or creativity to get away with something. So when I was younger and I would play men's league, I didn't have the size of my counterparts that I was playing against. I played my dad's men's league team. I was like 15, 16 years old. I was a pretty small guy. So I had to use other things to get by, and that's when you start kind of becoming longer in the tooth. You know, you start getting more experience. You start doing other things that would help you get by. And it was just that savviness about you, that cleverness, if you will.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe that was a big part of it, because I think in the article you were saying that like it was you were playing with like your club team, but then it was also playing with like grown men. You kind of had to adapt a little bit, and I thought that was pretty interesting just to see how it kind of makes your game evolve, getting those different experiences.
Yeah, and honestly, when you get to the next level, there are so marginal things that separate the good from the great, and everybody's there for something. Everybody's good enough to be there. Everybody has talent. You know, what separates these individuals is consistency and how often they can do it. And when you start kind of splitting hairs with talent, these kind of things factor in.
So you mentioned that everybody has talent. The issue of late seems to be that maybe everybody that has talent isn't getting to put that talent on display. So looking at youth development in the United States, specifically in regards to dual nationals, and frankly, if I'm being honest, specifically in regards to like Mexican Americans, where do you think where do you think we're coming up short as a program? Because it does seem like there's this massive group of players who are sort of disenfranchised at the moment.
Yeah, and not just Mexican Americans or not just Hispanic Americans, but minorities.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it what it is. The net isn't cast wide enough, long enough, far enough. So we're missing out on all these kids. If we're reliant on the developmental academies from U.S. Soccer or these MLS academies, we're going to keep falling short. We disenfranchise ourselves or separate ourselves from these inner city communities where these kids are participating and practicing the sport, but don't have the funds or don't see an avenue to success in the current model. It shouldn't be that these kids that are born in this country feel a need to leave the country to get top flight opportunities. We're a country unique to any other country in the world, and not just in the sport, but especially in the sport, I should say, because we're one of the few countries that can shape dual nationals, and not just Mexican Americans, but everybody in this country at some point, was an immigrant. So you go back far enough, so you could have the possibilities like Christian Pulisic to represent Croatia, a Rossi to represent Italy, all these other types of kids. So this is going to keep happening, and if we take advantage of the resources we have at hand, there should be no reason why we're missing out on these kids. Right now, it's Jonah Gonzalez, and it's not even that you lost Jonah Gonzalez. It's not even that we've won more players from Mexico than they have from us. It's that eventually there's going to be a Christian Pulisic in that crowd that you're going to miss out on.
I mean, I kind of feel like we already have with Jonathan Gonzalez, personally, because I think he's going to be a pivotal player in that number 6 role now for El Tri for, I would say, at least 10 years. I think he's that good from everything we've seen from him.
The thing is, people don't rate Liga MX, and it's a shame, because in this country, in the United States, it's the most popular league there is, and that includes if you're throwing in their Champions League and the Premier League, all that stuff. They don't come close to the numbers that Liga MX generates. They don't come close to the type of attention they have, the consumership in this country, not only for TV but for other things. This team that he's on is top 5 richest franchises or in rosters in Latin America. Everybody around the world is seeing Liga MX now as a league that's kind of taken the next step because of the money they have, the influx. He pretty much benched the Mexican national team starter in his position with less than a month as a top flight professional. His ceiling is through the roof. He's unlike most players I've seen. That said, he still has to prove himself. So Christian Pulisic has been proving himself a little bit longer for different positions, but everything's there for Jonah Gonzalez, and it's a shame that he'll be representing Mexico. potentially down the road.
So my question then is, why do you personally feel like that happened? Because I know some people have said, oh, they're in the World Cup, we're not, that's all there is to it. I've heard other people say,
Sure.
Look, he's Mexican-American, El Tri are a huge draw, El Tri are always going to win that battle. You, and I would say Jesse Gonzalez and many other players are good examples that that's not the case, but I'm wondering why you think he ended up choosing El Tri.
Well, I think he just felt he felt more valued in the current moment from the Mexican national team. We were sending Thomas Rongen and Tab Ramos texting him and calling him. That was our way of getting his attention. And El Tri's way, the Mexican national team way, they had the sporting director, constantly in contact with him and his family. They had his coach at Monterrey, who's a legend, Turco Mohamed, constantly talking to him, telling him about Mexico. He had his teammates. Oh, and by the way, he had Juan Carlos Osorio, the Mexican national team coach, literally pick up the phone, teleconference his family, and speak to his parents and him. This is what I see for you. I don't guarantee you anything, but if you work, you have an opportunity. The opportunity is there for you. They made an effort. They made a conscious effort, consistent effort to try to get through to this kid, and the U.S. Soccer Federation didn't. They can say that they felt they've done enough because they gave him the opportunities from U14 to U20. But when it comes to dual nationals, especially a dual national like a Mexican American who may have increased love and admiration for both national teams, both countries, it really is. You have to take your chances with these kids. You have to do whatever you can to make these kids feel valued. It happens at all levels. You see a Carmelo Anthony go back to his alma mater and make a phone call for a high school recruit, or all these other things. And the thing is, Mexico did that. They had his teammates talking to him. They had players in his position or talking to him. We didn't have anybody. If you would have asked Landon Donovan, hey Landon, I know you're retired, can you make a phone call? Or anybody else, Josie Alto, hey Josie, Michael Bradley, anybody. It doesn't matter if they're playing or if they're retired. Somebody this kid looked up to or sees, or can try to emulate and says, wow, this guy's already made it. He's there. I want to be there. They pick up the phone and talk to him. That means a lot to a kid like this. We didn't do that. We took it for granted. We had Thomas Rongen go down there, and then we had Tab Ramos, who, by the way, cut him from the U20 national team, saying, hey, trust us. You're in the plans.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll be honest and say again that like we didn't really know him that much. Daryl and I didn't when that U20 World Cup roster came out, so we weren't as angry then as we certainly would have been now, and as disappointed as we are now. So I did. Go ahead.
The main thing is it's not that he left. It's not that Jonah Gonzalez picked Mexico because they just had a lot more leverage. They have the World Cup. There's more upside for him. He's playing. He's in that lifestyle. He's in the public eye. He got a different taste of what the game is like in a culture like Mexico with the game. It's not that. You can lose players. That's fine. It's the fact that we don't value this type of player. We don't value the attributes that Jonah Gonzalez has as a whole for these Hispanic Americans. We don't value these kids enough to want to seek out these kids at a younger age so they don't go to a different country to try to get first flight or top flight opportunities, because in this country they're scarce.
I want to go back for a minute. I want to keep going with that, but first I want to go back to a point you just made about picking up the phone or having people of influence talking to Jonathan Gonzalez. We're at the coaching convention in Philly this week, and we've been hearing from a couple of different people that the firing of Hugo Perez may have played at least some part in his decision, Jonathan Gonzalez's decision to play for Mexico. So 2 questions for you. How important do you think Hugo Perez was in reaching young Hispanic players for the U.S. Federation, and do you think his departure from U.S. Soccer did maybe factor into Jonathan's decision?
I can't say how important or not important Hugo Perez was or is for U.S. Soccer. All I know was that he was a different type of coach that I'd seen in U.S. Soccer. When you look at the current U.S. Soccer coaches over the last decade, youth coaches, U15s, U16s, 17s, 20s, it seems, and especially in leadership positions as well within U.S. Soccer, it seems like we're recycling the same type of person over and over again in different roles. So what ends up happening is nothing. The same thing happens over and over again. Hugo Perez is a guy that many of his players have spoken very highly of. I don't know if his counterparts will speak that highly of him. I don't know him that well, but these kids spoke highly of him. Their parents spoke highly of him. Oh, by the way, kids who have been in his program under his watch, Jonah Gonzalez, Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic, Tyler Adams, he's got a good resume and a good understanding with these kids. And somewhere along the lines, I don't know what fractured, but something fractured between him and U.S. Soccer. And since then, a lot of these kids who were of minority descent, who he was going to these Alianza tournaments and sending them there or trying to scout these kids, they're there no longer. So you can read into it what you will. I don't know Ugo well enough. I don't know him at all, if I'm being honest. We've never spoken. But I do know some of these kids. I do know some of their parents. I have read plenty of people who will vouch for them.
So then going to the technical ability side of it. So why do you think it is that these talents aren't being either identified or appreciated, and they're sort of being cast aside in favor of players who fit a more conventional model? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, we are conditioned. We are conditioned in this country. When we see a game, we consider proper football British football. We consider proper commentary, British commentary. We are conditioned, so that's the type of style we want to emulate. But in reality, we have plenty of kids in this country who can emulate a different style. By the way, a style that's been kicking our ass for quite some time when it comes to club soccer. I
don't know. We've won the CONCACAF Champions League a lot. Major League Soccer has. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Liga MX for some reason finds value in this type of player, but we can't. You could say what you want about the Joe Coronas, the Edgar Castillos, the Ventura Alvarados, myself, Gringo Torres, Jose Torres, whatever you want about these players. Omar Gonzalez, you can say they're just not good enough. But by the way, all these players I've just mentioned were championship players. They've won titles in Mexico. Why are they good enough to be pieces on championship teams, starters on championship teams? And they've been able to find value out of these players, but we can't. It shouldn't be that way.
No, I mean, it shouldn't, but it feels like it is an issue where you don't have people, for example, attending the Sueño Alianza and having scouts there at least like in an official capacity from U.S. Soccer, trying to identify these players, trying to keep them like either on the radar or just kind of having those conversations with them. Whereas you have Liga MX clubs there, identifying them, taking them to Mexico, giving them opportunities that they're not getting here. I feel like that is a very much underutilized area that I still don't fully understand why it isn't something that U.S. Soccer pursues.
I don't want to get people confused, and I don't want them to think this is just, hey, this is a Mexican American problem. No. Listen, this isn't just we're missing out on kids issue. This is with the resources we have, with the players we have, we should be able to make the game accessible for all walks of life. This is a huge country, and you're going to have players falling through the cracks. But when the same type of player falls through the cracks over and over and over again, it's time for the federation to do something.
So then, looking at the U.S. Federation, obviously there's an election coming up. There's 8 candidates for U.S. Soccer presidency. Do you think there is one candidate who is more likely to do something about it, or is there other stuff that needs to happen that maybe U.S. Soccer presidency can't really help with?
It's such a loaded question for me because I'm in a position where I feel it's unfair if I lean towards one candidate or not. I see 8 individuals who have each promised something, have each taken a way of just talking, and I have seen very few, if any, actual plans. To be quite honest, the only one who's laid on an actual plan, this is my guide going forward. These are the steps I'm going to take. Is Kyle Martino. Am I sitting here and endorsing Kyle Martino? No, absolutely not. There are things of each candidate that I think would be interesting, but I have yet to see an actual candidate step forward and cement themselves as a front runner.
So then on a more individual level, either members of the media or just people out there who are listening, what do you think can be done at a grassroots level to encourage people who aren't otherwise being enfranchised to be able to be involved in U.S. soccer for a longer period of time?
Well, I think the federation needs to do a better job. A diversity task force, assemble a group of people from these communities who can help. We need to have outreach in these inner cities. We need to have these kids playing the sport. It can't be that we depend on U.S. soccer through MLS or developmental academies to reach these kids because our country's too big. There are 23 MLS teams. We have 50 states. These states are huge. These kids don't have the resources to get to one place. There's got to be a bigger reach. There's got to be a better level, a more accessible level of gaining coaching culture. We have to have people that want to coach, that go through proper and cost adequate programs. It's way too expensive to become a coach in this country. There's so much more we could be doing, and we're in a unique position because we compete with other sports and other things in this country for the attention of an individual. But we should at least be trying these things. We're sitting on a $150 million surplus, and we can't just sit back and say we've made it.
So Matt Doyle was on the show a week or so ago, and he threw your name into the ring as a person who might be very good at leading up a diversity task force, or a person who could be out there sort of representing U.S. soccer. Is that a position that you'd be interested in, is kind of like being on the front lines for U.S. soccer?
Matt Doyle absolutely hates me if that's what he wants from me. I've always said that I wanted to help kids that were in my position. I was an anomaly. I shouldn't have gotten as far as I did. I came from a very scarce region where the sport wasn't, quite frankly, good enough for kids to come out of. I don't want that for the next generation or the next generation. I want the same opportunities that's offered for a suburban kid to be offered for an inner city kid. It doesn't matter who it is. The next person in charge of that, or the next person in a position of power or leadership, has to understand that this game needs to be accessible for all walks. I'm very happy and comfortable where I am today. I don't know what the future holds. I'm flattered that somebody would throw my name in a position like that, but I also don't hate myself enough yet.
Well, that seems, first of all, I like that you ended with yet, but I really appreciate your taking the time, Herc. It seems like a good place as any to end on, and I know you've got parenting duties to attend to, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I really appreciate you talking to me.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.